Go.
All right, cool. Well, good afternoon to everyone listening in. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. This is our DonorSearch Deep Dive. My name is Stephen Shattuck, and I'm the VP of Marketing here at Bloomerang, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And today I'm joined by my colleague Chris from Bloomerang and my friend Ryan from DonorSearch. Hey there, guys.
Greetings.
Hi, how are you, Stephen?
Thanks for both of you for spending some time to chat with some Bloomerang customers today. And thanks to all of you for registering and taking a half hour or so out of your day to join us. I know all of you are Bloomerang users, and some of you are also DonorSearch users. And what's going to happen today is Ryan from DonorSearch, he has a short presentation. He's also going to show you some of his tips and tricks for using DonorSearch. So if you're not already using it, hopefully you'll find it interesting, and if you are already using DonorSearch, I think you'll have a lot to take away from this presentation to help you use it better. So Ryan's going to run through a few slides, and then he's going to jump right over to the tool. And as soon as he's done with that, we're going to jump into a Q&A session. So if you see something during his presentation, or maybe hear something you'd like explained, we'll try to answer just as many questions as possible within the 30 minutes. We wanted to keep this short since it is during the middle of the workday, and we don't want to keep folks from their busy tasks for too long. But feel free to send anything over in that chat box. I'll see those questions, and I'll field those to Chris and Ryan a little later on. And just so everyone knows, just some housekeeping things, I will be sending out a recording and Ryan's slides a little later on, so if you have to bounce early or just get disconnected for some reason, or just wanted to review the content again later, look for an email from me probably tomorrow with all those things. So Ryan, I'm not going to take up any more time. Why don't you get us started?
Thank you, Stephen. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Ryan Warnicki. I work at DonorSearch. I've been here for about 3 years. Just a little bit of background. DonorSearch is a prospect research company. If you don't know, we partner with your good friends at Bloomerang. Our service actually works from inside of your database. So the purpose of this deep dive today is to tell you a little bit more about prospect research, what it is, the basic principles of it, what you try and find out about an individual, and then how our product actually works from within the software that you subscribe to. So I guess if there are any questions during the presentation, as Stephen mentioned, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, and we'll try to get to them at the end of the presentation. Really quickly, here's the first slide. It's an overview. This is what we're going to cover. First off is what is prospect research. Secondly, it'll be the statistical markers of a philanthropist. We did a back study to actually figure out what can we find out about somebody that kind of proves that they've made a big gift somewhere. The third part's the integrated search. That's the online service that you can use from within Bloomerang. The fourth part is research tips. What these will actually do is this will give you some insight in what you can do to have a more effective search. What can you do to get more out of the service that you subscribe to, or you could subscribe to if you don't already. And then the last part is going to be direct donor search data acquisition. I'll get into that in just a little bit. So here we go. What is prospect research? In order to get the answer to this, I went to a place that a lot of people go for just about everything. I went to Wikipedia. And the Wikipedia page says, prospect research, also known as development research or fundraising research, is a process in fundraising wherein a researcher, which can be any one of us, identifies and provides relevant information about potential donors to an organization. What exactly does that mean? That means somebody tries to find out information about a prospect, perhaps look at their real estate, figure out if they're a business executive, try and identify gifts to other organizations perhaps, or see if they have a grant-giving foundation. Basically, identify any piece of information that could surface somebody as a major gift prospect or get you a little bit more concrete information about them so as as a gift asker, you actually have a good idea of what you might go in and ask for prior to meeting them. So let me, a few little, I guess, tips about what it can do, what it can't do, that kind of a thing. The first tip you'll see there, it's ideally used prior to a cultivation meeting. So what this means is you're going to want to go out and try and figure out what you can about the individual before you actually pick up the phone or call them and meet them for lunch. Or if you're going to, you will be speaking with specific people at an event, and either at the event or sometimes afterwards, you're going to try and set up a meeting for a gift ask. You want to do it then. So the point of this is ahead of time, before you actually meet with the person. Second thing, again, identify someone as a major gift prospect. It can identify philanthropy elsewhere. So if you find somebody making big gifts somewhere else, you get a sense of this is the amount of money the person has not only been asked for, but said yes to. That's in your favor. And then identify markers of wealth. The one thing that it can't do, just to be really clear, is that it will not tell you everything about the individual. There is a lot of information that you will learn when you do go to meet with the individual in person that you can't get off of public data. So imagine you're going to meet with somebody for lunch or tea at their house, and when you walk in, you discover that there's a Rembrandt in the house. Something like that, that's never going to be figured out in prospect research, and frankly, that's more valuable than most things that we would be able to tell you. So the preface is you have to come to an understanding that what these services and Google searches and anything like this can find, they're always going to be incomplete. They are a starting point. Okay. So the next part is the statistical markers of a philanthropist. Back in 2012, we back-tested our models to figure out what we could find, what data could DonorSearch append that was predictive of a known philanthropist. So what we did was we took data from 400 different nonprofits where they told us about 2 million individuals that had donated over $5 billion to those 400 different organizations. And what we did is we run them through our standard wealth and philanthropic reviews to see, all right, when we attend a piece of real estate, do a donor, a known donor, how predictive is that real estate of the known dollars donated? So from that, we came up with some numbers. So what we did was we looked at all the places you'd expect us to find predictive information, and we actually found places that were a little surprising. When we did the reviews, if you'll see here on the left, this is a benchmark database. That means what data set are we appending to the individuals. To the right of that is percent of the records. To the right of that is how much money did that subset of people find, and then you have the predictive strength. So, for example, when we looked across the file to find SEC insiders from among the 2 million people, we found that was 2% of the file. And that 2% of the 2 million people were responsible for giving away 15.5% of those $5 billion. So it has a predictive strength of about 7 3/4. The next most predictive marker we found was somebody with real estate over $1 million. So one of the things you can try and look for when you're looking at a profile to say, hey, do you think this person actually is a good major gift prospect or not, is if you find them having a piece of real estate over $1 million. Not too big of a surprise there. The next most predictive marker is finding somebody as the executive of a business where the company earned $5 million or more in revenue. So when we did that, we found 0.6% of the file that was responsible for 5% of the money, so the predictive strength there is 9%. When it really, really starts to tilt the scales in your favor, though, is when we're able to append an individual making a charitable gift elsewhere of size. So we found 0.7% of those 2 million people gave 7% of the $5 billion. The really, really telling part is actually when we can find somebody making a gift of $50,000 or somewhere else. Not a big surprise, but believe it or not, the industry standard in using these services isn't actually to look for that. So we know, though, when we find somebody making a gift of $50,000, $100,000, $1 million, that's actually your home run. That's the best thing you're looking for. As you can see here, that tiny subset of the group, 1.2%, was responsible for over a full third of the money donated. So again, when you try to find somebody that's a good major gift prospect, if you can find them making big gifts elsewhere, that's really your home run. From there, I'm going to show you the new integrated search. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of what it does, and then I'm actually going to go out, hop into Bloomerang, and show you a few quick searches from there. So what the integrated search does, it's going to save you time. It will go out and search multiple data sets and bring them all back into one comprehensive, editable profile. So it'll search wealth, it'll search for philanthropy, and it'll also search a free source that a number of you are probably familiar with called Zillow. So outside of that, what it'll show you a DS score, which is kind of like an overall rating, the overall quality, which says how accurate is this data going to be, and then two different ask amounts. Again, these aren't concrete. You want to use them to guide you, but when you meet the person, you certainly want to take the information you gain from that one-on-one meeting and use that to change it. For example, if somebody tells you that they're just starting to send their kids off to college, and let's say they're going to go to a private school, that might change how much you're about to ask them for. So you can keep that in mind. Anywho, the details, let me explain the different data sets that it looks at. So it'll go off and look across LexisNexis and Zillow. That's going to find real estate. It's going to look across Dun & Bradstreet and CorpTech, which will find you private business information. It's going to look for boats. It's going to look for airplanes. It's going to look across SEC insiders, and it'll also look across another data set that you're probably familiar with called GuideStar. That will try and identify those people as board members at either grant-seeking organizations or grant-giving foundations. If we go back to what's predictive of a known philanthropist, if you find that somebody is in fact a board member at a grant-giving foundation, it's not a big surprise that they themselves are likely to have made a big gift somewhere. At any point, I'm going to pop out of here, and I'm going to go into Bloomerang really quickly. Oh, not there. There we go. And over here, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll take a look for a very known wealthy individual in the Indianapolis area named Mel Simon. So if I type in Simon under the constituents right here, it's going to go ahead and it's going to try and find Mel Simon for me. Once it does, I'll be able to bring up his profile and actually go out and access, and I have to log back in. There we go. So once we log back in here, so again, this is the dashboard once you log into Bloomerang. And then from there, when I click this and I go ahead and type in Simon, it'll bring up any of the accounts that could be him. And here we have Mel Simon in Indianapolis, Indiana. That's the important part here, is that's the information that we have on Mel. When I go ahead and I click Perform Search, it's going to send over his name and the address information that we have, and it'll try and build a profile on it. So what happens is it's opened up this tab, and what you're looking at here, this is a preview of all of the different gifts that could be attributed to Mel. In a few seconds, these dots will switch over so that I can actually see the profile once it's built, and right on cue, there it is. So when I click it, it's going to bring back a brief summary. So the way it plays is this is the data that was presented to DonorSearch at the time of the query. You get the two different ask amounts. One's based on the biggest gift. So when it took the information here, it found one gift of $20,000 or more that it attributed to him confidently, and it actually was unable to rate the wealth information. If you look up here, what was put into it was simply a city and state. With that much information, oftentimes we're not able to find a whole lot of data and confidently match it. So I'll show you a way around that in a minute. As we keep scrolling down, you might notice there's blue question marks everywhere. The whole point of this is we want it easy for you to use and understand. So if you say, gee, I don't understand what this DS rating is, and you click it, up comes a brief little description that'll say, A DS1-1 is actually somebody who made a gift of $5,000 or more somewhere else. It's a high rating. Whereas you have somebody that's a DS1-4 or 1-5, we couldn't find that they were a good major gift prospect. It doesn't mean that they aren't. We just couldn't attribute anything to them. So they're somebody that we think could be a good club level donor for your annual fund, you know, a $100, $500, $1,000 a year gift kind of thing. So as we scroll down, here's what we found for Mel in terms of the type gifts. They're the ones with the white background. So we have this gift to the Indianapolis Art Museum in the name of both Mel and Bren Simon, and it was made back in 2006, and the range was $20,000 or more. Outside of that, if you look, there's a few $0 gifts. That doesn't mean he gave a $0 gift. It means when the nonprofit told us about the gift, they didn't tell us how big it was. So to show you, another thing you want to do when you're doing these searches is anytime you see a blue link, that'll actually take you off and do another search. So when I click DMSR over here, it's actually going to download that donor recognition document. Let's open it in Adobe. And I'll actually be able to pull up where his, and I guess his wife's foundation were listed as having made that gift. Let's see if I, there we go. So if I do Control F, SIMON, in this case it brings up the charitable foundation in their name. The point of this, though, would be to say, hey, can we find that there's a wing of a building named after them? Can we find there's an endowed scholarship, something like that? So anyway, without digressing too much, if you look at this, for somebody that's the owner of a basketball team, you'd figure, gee, this profile's kind of lean. And in fact, you're right. So one of the things we can do to enhance it is we can try and figure out, all right, well, where is it that Mel lives? Because if you notice here, all we had was that he was in Indianapolis, Indiana. So what we can do is we can actually go out and, where are we? Let's edit his address. First, let's see if we can't find it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to a website you're all familiar with, the White Pages. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in Mel. Nope, don't want the reverse lookup. Mel Simon, in Indianapolis. There we go, Indianapolis, Indiana, and hit search. And in a second, it's going to bring back here. We found there's a few different ones that have ads, and let's see. I believe this is. So once I click it, it's going to bring back the address. Did I do it right? Make sure you have a better pop-up blocker than what I've been using. You're going to want to bring up the address. Here we go. So it's 110 Ditch Road in Carmel, Indiana. So if I go back here, and under his address, I drop that in instead of Indianapolis, Carmel, and then his zip code over here. It's actually that. And I go ahead and I hit save. It'll switch his information, and then when I want to go back and run another profile, I'm going to get much better results. In fact, there's one other thing that we're going to want to do too while this is looking. It actually shows you his name is listed as Melvin. So let me go back into his profile and switch it over to Melvin, and you'll actually see an even bigger increase in the results. So here we go. Edit. Melvin, and save, and then we'll go ahead back to the summary and perform another search. So while the two searches are running, you see this one found the 8 gifts again. Once it actually has it, there's a lot more data that it's bringing back. So something as simple as just making sure you have the full name is going to greatly enhance the results of your search. This will take a few seconds. So while this is thinking, I'm actually going to bring back the presentation over here. And these are some research tips right here. So when you're doing the lookup, make sure you have a few things. Make sure that you have the person's name right. Okay, if you have their name right, you're going to get a lot more results. For example, when we looked up Melvin as opposed to Mel, it brought back the 420 plus possibilities as opposed to the 8 or 10 possibilities. Try and get a spouse name. If you can get a spouse name, the data is going to be even better. Try and get the correct address. When you can plug an address in, it's always going to do better. Frankly, we're not going to find a piece of real estate without at least the zip code, because otherwise it's a whole bunch of guesswork. Click the hyperlinks for more data. I'll show you that in a little bit. And perform multiple searches. Don't get discouraged by doing the first one. In fact, when you do a lookup, perhaps you can find more information. For example, we found his wife's name, Bren, and we could actually have used that to plug in more data back into Bloomerang and get even more data out of the next search. Okay, so at this point, that should be ready, and here is his profile. When I click the integrated search profile, look at the difference that we have. Okay, this over here is a giving. It's a breakdown of interest, so he likes to give to society benefit, really likes the arts. Behind that, we have the Democrats, and then what's over here in green? Education, independent schools. Over here, we found 7 different pieces of real estate valued at just under $2 million. We found over $400 million worth of insider stocks. There are $13 million worth of confirmed gifts. The biggest one that we're really confident of is $10 million or more. And then we found political gifts off the charts, $750,000. To see all the data, you can open the individual tabs. So here's the gift from Mel and Bren Simon to the Indianapolis Museum of Art. In fact, if you want to change it, all of these are editable. So down here, there's the $50 million campaign gift to Indiana University. You see it has a gray background. If I click it, and over here in the Action tab, I hit Mark Very High, the profile is actually going to recalculate. So suddenly the target ask based on his biggest gift is actually 50 million instead of 10, and you see that gift is listed up here with a very high quality score of 20. If you want to see more data, such as the political giving, this is a great place to do more research. So when I look at this $25,000 gift to the DNC, or the Democratic Senatorial Campaign in 2009, and I click this, it actually does a search for Simon, property owner, Mel Simon. This guy's a big deal. It brings up his company's Wikipedia page. The goal for that really, though, is more oftentimes than not, you're going to pull up somebody's LinkedIn, which is quite telling. Down below that, LexisNexis. So these are the individual site matches where we found them linked to the address that we put in. So they pay taxes from 110 Ditch Road on this address, 5301 Lee Avenue in Little Rock, Arkansas. In fact, what we do from there is we actually run anything we get a full address for in Zillow. So if you want to know more about that property he has in Little Rock, Arkansas, I click this, it'll take me to the overview. Over here, the map's going to load, and if I want to see even more, there we go. There's the bird's eye, and we can actually do one better. This is probably a rental property of his. That's the street view. You actually get a really good look at what the property is. If we want to go back, let's go ahead and go back. It'll take us to the profile. And apparently I need some better firewall stuff. Much better firewall stuff. We'll go back this way. If we take a look here, Dun & Bradstreet, these are private businesses. So the way it works is, here's a $5.9 million company, Simon Enterprises, where he is listed as chairman of the board. That alone isn't going to cause us to have a really big ask amount because we don't know what he's compensated, but that gives you a much better idea of who he is, and he probably makes a fair bit of money for doing that. So, you know, there is a little bit of, you're going to make some assumptions with this. Over here, these are all the different boards, grant giving boards that he was listed on. Down below that, we have the grant seeking nonprofits, so Jewish Federation of Greater Indianapolis. he's been on their board for quite some time. And then if we look down below, these are actually his SEC insider holdings, where he has exercised options, and on the same date, you can actually see that he sold shares. Okay, so that's a windfall of cash. Down below that, this is going to be summary information about him as an SEC insider, and this will be some biographical stuff, the marquee who's who, where it lists him as the partial owner of the Pacers. One last thing right here is who knows who. Anytime we find him on a board, such as the Jewish Federation of Greater Indy, we're actually going to show you all the other board members, so you get those potential connections. If you know him, he could probably introduce you to John Ackerman. If you don't know him, but you happen to know John or Gerald or Bradley, perhaps one of them could provide an introduction. So those are some tips about how to do the search, the data that you can find. And here's one last part of the presentation before I hand it over to Chris. Data acquisition. On a daily basis, DonorSearch adds anywhere between 50 to 100,000 charitable gift records to our databases. So as it stands now, we've pulled a little under 50 million gift records from annual reports, donor honor rolls. You know, you go to the play, you get the playbill, and in that it includes the donors. We pull that donor recognition list out, and that's how we build our database. So it all comes from public data. So what that means is you know the peer organizations in your backyard better than we do. If you are clients, you can actually tell us, you can say, hey, I want you to try and get the data for this theater and that school and the university in my backyard, and we can go out and find it. If it's out on the web, we'll get that data back into the database, and when you look folks up, we're going to do a much better job for you. In fact, you can send those lists to client support at DonorSearch.net. So without any further hesitation, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pass this off to Chris. I think we have about 5 minutes for Q&A here.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. That was awesome. Chris is here. He's standing by. He's waiting for any questions from folks. So if there was something that maybe you wanted Chris or Ryan to explain, you know, feel free to send those over in the chat box. We've got about probably 5 minutes before the half hour is up. We don't want to keep people too long, but happy to answer any questions. So yeah, Chris, was there anything that you wanted to cover real quickly?
Yeah, only that I want all of our Bloomerang customers, and in this case, particularly our DonorSearch customers, to know who I am, because my job, for those of you that haven't met me yet, is to my title is Customer Success Advocate, and I'm ultimately responsible for making sure that all of our Bloomerang customers and those using some of our partner tools like DonorSearch, that they're happy and successful users. So I'll follow up with everybody after the show, at least by email, to introduce myself, whether you're a current DonorSearch user or whether you're interested in DonorSearch, to see if you need any help to make your Bloomerang experience better, your DonorSearch experience better, then that's what I want to do. So you can expect to hear from me by email, and if you have any feedback, questions for me, then I'll be happy to engage in a conversation with you.
Cool. Yeah, Chris he's here for you guys. He is your man with boots on the ground at Bloomerang, so don't hesitate to reach out to him if you ever need anything. Hey, Ryan, looks like we've got a couple questions here in the chat room. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to toss them your way. Christina here was wondering if you can automatically save the donor search information to a constituent's profile in Bloomerang. And I think the answer is no to the automatic part, but maybe you could share some ways folks can put that information in Bloomerang.
Yeah, that's a great question. So as of right now, there is not a way to automatically send the data back. Let me try and get back here. There we go. There is not a way to automatically send the data back in to Bloomerang. What we are doing, however, is we are working on building the technology so that there will be another button to click to get that data back in. And I don't have a time frame for you, but that is available outside of Bloomerang. However, you can certainly, you can certainly save these profiles. And actually, Chris, perhaps you know this, you might know this, are there notes fields somewhere in, or not are there, where are the notes fields in Bloomerang so that you could enter information in about, let's say, the biggest gift or what their DS rating is or that kind of a thing? Where could we find that?
Yeah, well, there's a constituent note field on their, should be there on their profile page where we can scroll. Below custom fields.
Keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. We put a lot of stuff into here.
Oh, they may not have a note yet.
Oh, okay. If there are no notes for this donor, they wouldn't show up. But there is a note field on every donor. You can put notes on the constituent record itself, or you can put it on notes in their timeline, or both, depending on what your protocols are. So the short answer is yes, you can create a summary of their whatever summary you can extract from their DonorSearch profile and put that on a note so that anybody who looked at their record could see what you'd already discovered.
I think that's what most of our users do. They and get their info from DonorSearch, and then they just created a note on the constituent profile. I think that's what most folks do. Cool. Well, we've got another question here from Rita. She's asking if there's a separate Bloomerang entry which is marked as a relationship to another person. So if Bren has a relationship with Melvin, will DonorSearch include the person that is in the relationship with the person you're researching? And I think the answer is no. I think that button just does a search on the one person. Isn't that right, Ryan?
Yes, that's correct. So it won't bring over any relationships. The way Who Knows Who works is it looks across any of the known data sets that match. So when we identify that he is an executive at Clay Terrace and Simon Property Group and anything like that, it will go out and it will look to see who at those organizations is also at the board level and list all of them. It doesn't actually bring in previous relationships or anything like that. That's not the way the search is functioned.
So Rita, go ahead and do a search on Bren separately also. And you'll get the information that way. We've got one more question, and I think then we'll call it a day. So thanks again to everyone who stuck around and who listened for about a half hour. Ryan, Jolie here was wondering if DonorSearch offers predictive modeling services based on outside data and a donor's giving to the client's organization. Do you guys do any sort of predictive modeling over at DonorSearch?
Joel, excellent question. We absolutely do predictive modeling. We also do what's known as a wealth screening, wherein in both of those instances, they're actually quite similar. The predictive modeling is the back end of a wealth screening. What we would do is we would take a look at your database and identify who are the better donors by looking at your giving information. And then independent of whether or not they're good donors or not donors at all, we'll actually go out and try and identify, can we find them making gifts anywhere else? Can we find that they sit on the boards of grant giving foundations or they're SEC insiders and look for their real estate, that kind of a thing. And then on the back end, we actually come up with a few different scores. One of them would be an annual fund likelihood where we reconcile that known internal giving that we pull from Bloomerang, and we reconcile that with, let's say, the giving elsewhere and the wealth elsewhere. The wealth is a little less predictive in that scenario. And we do another one for the major gift likelihood where we'll actually go out and we'll, if somebody, let's say, has $10 million in real estate and gave a $5 million gift somewhere, that will cause them to score highly in a predictive model, but nothing will cause them to score better than if they've already been a good donor to you. And actually, when we do those services, we typically return these profiles on at least 10%, if not more, of the entire file. So long answer to a short question. The short answer.
Great. Yeah, okay, great. Well, I know we went a little bit over, so thanks everyone for hanging around. I think we'll call it a day there. I know Chris is always standing by for any more additional questions, so don't hesitate to reach out to him. You'll probably hear from him in the next few days or so. You'll also be receiving an email from me tomorrow that'll have a recording link to this presentation as well as all of Ryan's slides. So a little later or had to leave early, I guess if you left early you're not going to hear this, but I will be sending those out so you can watch them later. So Ryan, I'll say thanks to you. Thanks for showing us all this good stuff. And Chris, thanks for putting this together and being here as well. It was great to have you both here.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, customers.
Stephen, Chris, everybody, thank you much, and you have a great rest of the day.
All right, guys, take it easy. We'll be in touch soon.